Hello and welcome students. Now today we are going to start one of the very important chapter of class 7 history, the Delhi Sultanate. Now in this chapter we will talk about Alauddin Khilji, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, two most important and very famous sultans. Then after we will have a look on their administration. But before that we will have a look on their expansion, the policies, how they expanded themselves and the problems that they faced in expanding their rule all over the subcontinent. So let's begin. Here, the first topic that we are having is Delhi becomes capital. So under whose rule will Delhi become first capital? So the Delhi that we today know was not actually the capital at that time. Delhi was a small place, and the first dynasty or the kingdom, you can say, who regarded this Delhi as their capital were the Tomara Rajput. One of the famous ruler of this Tomara Rajput was Angpala. He was the person who made his capital Delhi. Now, again, this Tomara Rajput were defeated by the another Rajputs. They were Chauhans. Now, these Chauhans were also known as Chamanas, as we have discussed in our previous chapter, chapter 2, New Kings and Kingdoms. They belong to Ajmer. One of the very famous ruler of this Chamanas or Chauhans were the Prithviraj Chauhan III, who defeated Muhammad Ghori, as we have already discussed in previous chapter. Now, in their time, in their period, this Delhi became one of the important commercial center. Now, they also minted a coin here, used a new type of coin, and those coins were known as Delhiwals. The Delhi that we today know, that is a combination of many different cities like Firozabad. So these combination of these cities that we know today as a Delhi were actually made by the Delhi Sultans. After that, we are having Rajput dynasty. Let's have a look on the Rajput dynasties. The first, as we have already discussed, were the Tomara Rajputs. They actually ruled from early 12th century to 1165. One of the very famous ruler of this dynasty was Angapala. He ruled from 1130 to 1145. After that, the next Rajput famous dynasty was Chauhans. They ruled from 1165 and to 1192, and the famous ruler was Prithviraj Chauhan, who ruled from 1175 to 1192. We are having findings about Delhi Sultanate. So what are the things that are useful that talks about the period of Sultanate? So first thing that we are having the coins, second inscriptions, then after architecture. These were the things that we found. Apart from these things, we are also having histories. These histories were known as Tariq in singular and Tariq in plural. These histories were written in Persian language, and this was the same language which was used in the administration of the Delhi Sultanate. Now, after that, manuscript. As we have already seen standard 6 also, manuscript. Manuscripts were actually written in hand. So, in the period of Sultanate, how these manuscripts were actually prepared. So, for making this manuscript, there were 4 different processes. First the person who made this manuscript usually prepare the paper. Second, they have to write text on it. And to highlight the important words, important paragraphs, important sentences, they use melting gold to highlight the important things. After that, the person binds that whole paper into one book, that is binding process. So these were actually 4 different stages of making a manuscript. Now, who were actually the authors of TUGHLUQ? Remember, TUGHLUQ was actually the histories of the sultans. So the authors of this TUGHLUQ were the learned men, like secretaries, like administrators, poets, and courtiers. So they were the people who usually write this TUGHLUQ. Some special or additional details about TUGHLUQ. First thing, they usually live in a city, hardly in village, because they were more closer to the king. So they used to live in a city. So they must have a direct contact with the sultans. After that, they also wrote histories for sultans in the hope of rich rewards, as the Brahmins used to write prashastis for reward. See, in the same way, the writers of TUGHLUQ usually write histories of sultans in a hope of rich rewards. Apart from that, in TUGHLUQ, the writers also include the social order and social orders like birthright and gender discrimination. Okay. Now here we are going to see that what these ideal social orders were. It includes 2 important points. First was birthright and second was gender distinction. Birthright means the people believed that noble inherited their rights to govern because they were born in certain families. Means a king's son will become a king. So that was the mindset of the king. That is known as privileges. That a king's son will become a king. That was birthright. The second was gender distinction. It means social and biological difference are common. There is between men and women. So it is the right of a man to rule, but there is no such type of right of a women. Usually these differences are used to argue that men are superior to women. Now let's see that where this gender distinction broke in this Sultanate period. Razia Sultan. She was the daughter of Iltutmish, and Iltutmish belongs to slave dynasty. Now she became a sultan in 1236, but her time, her age, her era was not actually suitable because the novel and many of the writers of TUGHLUQ were not actually satisfied with her. She was more able than qualified, as a famous chronicler of the age Minaji Siraj says, that she was more able than her all brothers, but he was not comfortable at having a queen as a ruler, because it actually opposes the social order, ideal social order that we have discussed in previous slide. Now she was removed from throne in 1240. Now let's talk about some more women ruler of her age. Razia Sultan. There were 2 more rulers. Women ruler belongs to her age. One is Rudrama Devi. She ruled from 1262 to 1289. She belongs to Kakatiya dynasty of Warangal, which is in Andhra Pradesh. Actually, she changed her name and pretended as she was a man. Now the second was Dida. Dida ruled from 980 to 1003, almost 23 years. And she got this title Dida from this Hindi word Didi, which means elder sister. She ruled in Kashmir. Now let's have a look on the expansion of Delhi Sultanate. In the early 13th century, the control of Delhi sultans expanded and went beyond the heavy fortified towns that were the garrison town. Garrison town were the special towns where the army lives. Now sometimes what happened that sultans usually take control of hinterland also, but most of the time they have to depend on the trade, tribute or plunder. They used to depend on trade or any gift from the king, any king, or any type of plunder, loot, violence. Then after, you can see here is a map where you can see the cities which were actually captured by one of the famous slave dynasty ruler, Samsuddin Iltutmish. Here many cities were there. Now, what were the difficulties that they faced in the expansion? First of all, controlling garrison towns means there were many towns that were controlled by the Delhi Sultans. But controlling a town which is in West Bengal and controlling the another town which is in Gujarat was a very difficult job, as they were too much distant from each other. Next, they have faced many rebellions, wars, and bad weather conditions. These negative things actually made many difficult situations for them for communication or for other purpose. Apart from that, they always challenged by the Mongol invasion from Afghanistan. Next, they were also challenged by their own governors. Whenever the governors saw that the sultans became weak, they used to rebel against their sultans. Now, Delhi Sultanate expansion occurred during the reign of three important rulers: Ghiyasuddin Balban, who belongs to slave dynasty, Alauddin Khalji, who belongs to Khalji dynasty, and the last Muhammad Tughlaq, who belongs to Tughlaq dynasty. The first set of expansion, I want to tell you that this expansion happened in two phases. First, in the first set of expansion, their sultans actually took control of internal frontier, means the whole control of the hinterland. Next, forests were cleared in the Ganga Yamuna Dwab. Ganga Yamuna Dwab, you can see here in the map between the region between the Ganga and Yamuna rivers. Next is hunters and gatherers were removed from that area, and that area is given to the peasants for agriculture. Now, new fortresses and towns were established to protect trade routes and to promote regional trade. That's how they can develop, their sultanate can develop. The second set of campaign is actually done for external frontiers. External frontier was the area apart from the sultanate, means outside the sultanate. In this, these two important rulers, Alauddin Khalji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq, usually lead many military expeditions in the southern India to control. After that, whenever the sultanate win a part of land, they actually captured elephants, horses, slaves, and carried many precious materials also. Okay, so here is Alauddin Khalji, very dangerous and very powerful too. So here, by the end of Muhammad Tughlaq reign, means almost 150 years after, the armies of Delhi Sultanate had marched across a large part of subcontinent. Large part of India was under the Sultanate. They have defeated rival enemy armies and seized the cities. The Sultanate collected taxes, gave justice under its kingdom. Now the Sultans expanded their rules everywhere, all over the subcontinent. Now, if you want to take a look on Alauddin Khalji's campaign into South India, so you can see here, these are the campaigns. Delhi to Gujarat, Delhi to Bengal, Delhi to Warangal, Delhi to Devnagari, Devagiri, and very famous here is Madurai. So this Alauddin Khalji reached Madurai. That was the southernmost point of the Alauddin Khilji. Okay, as we have discussed that Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq, they were the two important rulers of Delhi Sultanate. Now let's have their administration. How was their administration and how they faced the challenges that came in front of them? The first, here we are talking about Alauddin Khilji. For controlling such a vast Delhi Sultanate needed reliable governors and administration. So for them, for governors, administrators, what Delhi Sultans used to do, they, especially Iltutmish, favored their special slaves, and the sultans usually believe on slaves more than their sons, and these slaves were known as bandagan in Persian language. Now, since they were totally dependent upon their master, who? The slaves. So slaves were totally dependent on their masters. That's why there were no chance of betraying. So here is a picture of one of the famous bandagan of Alauddin Khalji, Malik Kafur. Alauddin Khalji and Tughlaq continued to use bandigans who and also raised people of humble birth. Humble birth means people who belongs to low position of the society. So Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq, they both raised the people from low position and give them high political positions. And by giving these positions, the people of low position in the society usually believe more than other people on their sultans. Now slaves and clients were loyal to their masters but not to heirs. As I told you that the slaves were always loyal to their masters but not their heirs, not their child. New sultans had their own servants. That was the so as we have discussed that the king or the sultan usually give high positions to the people of humble birth, people who belong to low position in the society. Now this was the thing that the elites and the Tuaregs don't like. Those who write this Tuareg usually don't like about the Sultan. The patronage that was given to these humble people by the sultans were actually shocked many elites. When sultan don't give special position to these elites, that's why they actually not very much happy with the sultan. Author of Persian Tuareg criticized the Delhi sultan for appointing the low and base born. So low and base born means the people who belongs to very low caste in the society. Now, let's talk about their administration more. So, there were the Ikta. Ikta was a part of land, and this part of land was looked after by the people who were known as Iktadar or Muqtis. So, this Iktadar and Muqtis actually support Sultan, Delhi Sultans, with military campaigns and also maintain law and order in their Iktas. Up on behalf of that, the Sultan usually give rights to these muktis or iqtadars to collect revenues from this iktas, and those revenues were actually distributed in this form of assignments or salaries. Control over muktis. So it is possible that muktis may collect any amount of tax from the people of his ikta, but there was a control of sultans also. For controlling these iqtadars, what sultans did, let's discuss about that. First of all, the office of muktis or iqtadars were not actually inheritable. That means the son of one mukti will not become the another mukti after his father's death. Actually, his office was intransferable. Next to that, Ikta was for a small period of time. Accountants were also appointed, those who always used to check the collection of money by the muktis. It was seen that the muktis only collect the tax prescribed by the state. That was looked after by the accountants. And this type of rules, and one very important thing, they also kept the amount only the required number of soldiers. If they will keep more than that number of soldiers, then they will be punished by the sultan. Can you tell me that why actually they just have to keep the required number of soldiers that was prescribed by the sultans? Think about that. Now these type of Rigorous policies or rigorous situations were only imposed in the time of Alauddin Khalji. Now, as the sultans brought the hinterland under their control, they forced the landed chieftains. Chieftains, landed chieftains were the samantas, those who were having rights to collect revenue before this Delhi Sultanate or Delhi Sultans, and rich landlord to accept their authority. So now every type of people, whether they belongs to elite group, whether they belong to low base born, they have to accept the authority of Sultan. The rights of local chieftains to levy taxes were cancelled. Now all have to pay taxes. All people, everyone have to pay taxes. Now sultans usually administrators, usually having administrators to measure the land and kept careful accounts that with how much land is having by a particular people. Apart from that, let's discuss about the taxes or types of taxes in the time of Delhi Sultanate. There were three types of taxes. First on cultivation, second on cattle, or third on houses. So the cultivation tax was also known as kharaj, and this was the 50% of peasants' produce. And this 50% of peasant produce was actually imposed by the Alauddin Khalji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq. We will discuss about that in our coming slide. Now, some important points to remember. Like a large part of subcontinent remained outside the control of it. Till now, we have discussed only positive things about the sultans. Now here is a negative thing, that the subcontinent was so big that it was not possible for sultan to control each and every part of land. So sometimes what happens that it becomes difficult to control far off territories from Delhi. Not just annexing South India was difficult, as we talked about Alauddin Khilji. Well, it was difficult to annex South India, but there were many forest areas in the Ganga plain too, where it was difficult for the Sultanate army to penetrate, to go inside, because there were many local chieftains lived there, and they all actually always active for fight. Some rulers did try to enter the control these areas, but were able to do so only for a short period of time. It was not possible for them to control each and every part of subcontinent. Okay, here's a very famous traveler named Ibn Battuta. He actually came from Morocco in Africa. He actually wrote about many such chieftains who usually lives in this Ganga plain and fought against the Sultan. He actually wrote about the time when he came to India at the time of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Now let's see some of the administrative challenges that were faced by the Alauddin Khalji due to Mongol invasion. As I told you that Mongol invasion was very common at the time of Alauddin Khalji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So how both faced against these challenges? What were the steps that they have taken? First, Delhi was attacked twice at the time of Alauddin Khilji. First in 1299 and second in 1302. But because Alauddin Khilji raised a very large standing army, so they were actually not able to come or enter into India. Alauddin constructed a new garrison town for his soldiers, and the name of that garrison town was Siri. Apart from that, for feeding his soldiers, as we discussed that the Alauddin Khilji raised a large standing army, so food was also needed. For that, the produce that we have discussed earlier, that 50% of the yields produced by the peasants have to given as a tax, that was known as kharaj. So in the time of Alauddin Khilji, he took 50% of 50% of produce from the peasants as tax. Alauddin paid soldiers in salaries in cash rather than iktas. Alauddin controlled the prices of goods in Delhi because if the prices will be high, then how the soldiers will buy it? It was not possible for soldier, so he always looked after about these things that price of goods should not be increased. Apart from that, Alauddin's administrative system was quite successful. He successfully withstood the threat of Mongol invasion, and he was very much successful. Here are the challenge how the Muhammad Tughlaq faced the challenges of Mongol invasion. First, the Sultanate was attacked in the early years of Muhammad Tughlaq's reign. When he became the Sultan, at that time only the Mongols invaded India, attacked India. He was not he has not constructed any type of garrison town, but he converted a old city of Delhi, oldest city of Delhi, the Delhi-e-Kuna, into his garrison town, and he transferred each and every resident of that town to in the south, Daulatabad. Tax was collected to feed the army, and Sultan also levied additional taxes like Alauddin Khilji. But his time was not good because at that time a famine actually hit that place, Ganga Yamuna Dwar. Muhammad Tughlaq also paid salaries to the soldiers in cash, and he also introduced a token currency which was made up of chief metal, and the people were very smart. They get to know that these currencies were made of chief metal, and they also the people of Delhi Sultanate, the common people of Delhi Sultanate used to give taxes in the form of these cheap metal token currencies apart from gold or silver. Now, his administrative measures were actually failure. We can say that his time was not good or his good luck was bad. So he gave up his plans to invade Transoxiana. This place was in Iran, and he was the only ruler who have actually got this idea to invade the city which was ruled by Mongol. The shifting of people to Daulatabad was resented. It was also not successful. The raising of taxes and famine in the Ganga Yamuna Dwar belt led to widespread rebellion. Actually, his measures, his all the measures was regarded as failure, unfortunately. So as we know that all the measures taken by Muhammad bin Tughlaq against Mongol were failure. But here is the one offensive measure which was taken by Muhammad bin Tughlaq and only Muhammad bin Tughlaq. That was the invading Transoxiana. This was actually the capital of Mongols. That and this Transoxiana was actually invaded by Genghis Khan, a Mongol leader, which lies in northeast Iran in 1219. Muhammad bin Tughlaq actually planned a campaign to capture a Mongol territory. None of the Delhi Sultan ever thought about that. So here is the lecture. I hope that you all understood very easily, and if you are having any problem, you can write in comments also. Thank you. Signing off, Aman Sharma.